November 2nd, 1944. 0547 hours. Hergen Forest, Germany. The fog hangs between the fir trees like wet wool, so thick that Obergefreiter Klaus Becker can taste it cold, metallic, laced with pine resin and the faint corruption of unburied dead. He lies motionless in a shallow scrape beneath a fallen spruce, his Kar 98K sniper rifle cradled against his shoulder, the Zeiss scope lens hooded against moisture. 60 meters ahead, through a narrow corridor between two massive tree trunks, he can see the American positions, or what passes for positions. Foxholes dug too shallow, too obvious. Helmets silhouetted against lighter bark. Becker has been a sniper since Stalingrad. He knows what poor infantry looks like. Behind him, somewhere in the endless maze of ravines and logging roads, the 275th Infantry Division holds what remains of the Siegfried Line's outer defenses. Ahead, the Americans of the 28th Infantry Division, the Keystone Division from Pennsylvania, have been throwing themselves against these forests for 6 days. Becker has watched them die with the methodical patience of a craftsman. 32 confirmed kills in this sector alone. Each shot a surgical strike. Each bolt action cycle a rhythm as familiar as breathing. The Americans call these woods the death factory. The Germans call them home. Movement. 55 meters, left flank. An American soldier rising from his foxhole, shoulders hunched against the cold, his M1 Garand rifle slung carelessly across his back. Even through the fog, Becker can see the man's breath pluming. He's young. They're all young. Probably drafted from some farm in Ohio or Kansas, given 6 weeks of basic training and a rifle he barely knows how to clean, then shipped across the Atlantic to die in woods he can't pronounce. Becker's finger rests lightly on the trigger. He doesn't rush. The American is fumbling with something. A canteen, maybe, or a cigarette he shouldn't be lighting. The Zeiss scope brings him close enough to see the stubble on his jaw, the way his hands shake from cold or fear or both. Dummkopf, Becker whispers. The Kar 98K barks once, a flat crack that the fog swallows immediately. Through the scope, Becker sees the impact, the American's head snapping back, the spray of darker moisture against the pale mist, the body collapsing like a marionette with cut strings. No shouting. The Americans have learned that shouting only draws more fire. Becker works the bolt with practiced efficiency, the brass casing ejecting in a lazy arc, the fresh round sliding home with a metallic snick that reverberates through the rifle's action and into his shoulder. He scans for reaction. 3 for seconds. Then the American foxholes erupt in poorly aimed rifle fire, muzzle flashes strobing through the fog like a storm of fireflies. Rounds crack overhead, thud into tree trunks, zip through branches. All of it high, all of it desperate, all of it wasted. Becker smiles beneath his camouflaged hood. This is the pattern. The Americans have firepower. He'll grant them that, but no discipline. They see a muzzle flash, and everyone opens fire at once, emptying magazines in wild bursts, then ducking down to reload while German machine gunners triangulate their positions. It's been the same story, from Normandy to the West Wall. The Americans have equipment. The Germans have experience. Beside Becker's hide, Unteroffizier Hans Vogel lies behind an MG-42, its barrel threaded through a carefully constructed blind of pine branches. Vogel is grinning, a wolf's grin, all teeth and hunger. Another one for the list, Klaus? 33. Becker doesn't take his eye from the scope. How many rounds did they just waste? 200? 3, at least. Vogel's hand rests on the MG-42's pistol grip, patient. And now they'll send someone to retrieve the body. They always do. It's true. The Americans are sentimental. They risk entire squads to recover dead comrades, exposing themselves to covering fire that a Wehrmacht unit would simply accept as casualties of war. Becker has killed medics wearing Red Cross armbands, not because he's cruel, but because warfare has no room for sentiment. A dead medic means 5 other soldiers distracted, demoralized, potentially frozen in indecision. The fog shifts, thinning slightly in the rising thermals of morning. Becker can see more of the American line now, a ragged constellation of foxholes stretching north along a fire break that offers fatal exposure. He counts positions, estimates strength. 25, perhaps 30 men. A full rifle platoon, probably attached to one of the companies grinding itself to pieces against the German defenses. They've been attacking for a week. They've gained 400 meters. They've lost hundreds of men per meter. And still they come, stumbling through minefields and interlocking machine gun fire, because their generals have orders from Eisenhower to push through to the Ruhr dams, as if a few kilometers of forest matter more than the lives of boys who've never seen real war. Movement, Vogel says quietly. You're 2 o'clock. 2 of them. Becker swings the scope right. 2 Americans, crouched low, moving with the exaggerated caution of soldiers who know they're exposed, but don't know exactly where the threat lies. They're heading toward the fallen man, one carrying a rifle, the other a medical bag marked with the Red Cross. The medic's hands are shaking so badly Becker can see it even at this distance. Let them get closer, Becker murmurs. When they reach the body, you take the one with the rifle. I'll take the medic. The medic. Vogel's grin fades slightly. That's war. Becker's voice is flat. That's war. The 2 Americans reach their fallen comrade. The one with the rifle takes a knee, scanning the tree-line with wide, terrified eyes. He's barely 18, Becker thinks. Maybe younger. The medic kneels beside the body, checking for signs of life even though half the man's skull is gone. It's the ritual of the living, the desperate need to believe death can be negotiated with, bargained away. Becker centers the crosshairs on the medic's chest. Center mass. The shot that never misses. Now, he says. His Kar 98K cracks once. Vogel's MG42 doesn't fire. Just a single shot from Becker's rifle, and the medic pitches forward across the body of his comrade. The rifleman doesn't even have time to run. He stands, frozen in shock, mouth opening to scream, and Becker is already working the bolt. The second round takes him in the throat. He goes down clutching his neck, blood pulsing between his fingers, drowning in his own blood before he can make a sound. 35 confirmed kills. Becker ejects the brass and reloads with the calm of a man punching a factory-time card. The American line erupts again. More rifle fire, more wasted ammunition. Becker counts the muzzle flashes. 22 separate positions firing. He makes mental notes of each one. Tonight, when the Americans settle in for another cold, miserable evening, German patrols will probe those positions. Artillery will walk across those coordinates. By morning, half those foxholes will be graves. They never learn, Vogel says, almost pityingly. All that equipment, all those supplies, and they fight like children playing soldier. Becker says nothing. He's watching the American positions through a scope, noting which soldiers take cover properly, which ones panic fire, which ones show any sign of training or competence. There are few, there are always a few, who move with purpose, who fire in controlled bursts, who understand that survival in combat requires more than patriotic enthusiasm. Those are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones he'll kill first. The fog thickens again, closing like curtains across a stage. Becker settles deeper into his hide, patient as stone. The Americans will probe again in an hour, maybe 2. They'll send out a patrol, or call in artillery, or try another fumbling assault across the fire break. And Becker will be here, waiting, his Kar 98K loaded and ready. He's been killing Americans for 5 months, from the hedgerows of Normandy to these cursed forests. He's watched them stumble through the bocage, watched them bunch up in fatal clusters, watched them advance with the parade ground precision that gets men killed in real combat. They have numbers. They have logistics. They have the naive confidence of an army that's never really been hurt. But they don't have experience. They don't have the hard-won wisdom of men who've survived Stalingrad and Kursk and the long, grinding retreat across Europe. Klaus Becker chamber another round and waits for the next target to present itself. The Americans, he thinks, are going to learn a hard lesson. He just doesn't know yet that the lesson cuts both ways. November 2nd, 1944, 0612 hours, 700 meters west of German positions. Private First Class Daniel Hastings crouches in a foxhole that's more mud than earth, His M1 Garand clutched across his chest like a talisman against the cold and the fear and the thing that just killed 3 of his squamates in less than 10 minutes. His hands won't stop shaking. It's not the cold, though the cold is bad enough, seeping through his wool uniform and the field jacket that's supposed to keep him warm, but doesn't. Not here. Not in this place where the fog holds onto darkness long past sunrise. It's the silence that gets inside your head. The waiting. Beside him, Corporal Jimmy Rodriguez presses his back against the muddy wall of their hole, breathing through his nose in short, controlled bursts. Rodriguez is from El Paso, 22 years old, 3 months in theater. He's got the eyes of someone who's seen too much too quickly. That flat, 1,000-yard stare that never quite focuses on anything real. His M1 rests across his knees, barrel pointed up, the wood stock scarred and dark with moisture. "We gotta get out of this hole," Rodriguez whispers. "We stay here, we're dead. That Kraut sniper's got us zeroed. Sarge says we hold position until the platoon reorganizes." Hastings replies, but his voice cracks on the last word. He's 19, from Iowa. His father taught him to hunt deer in the woods outside Dubuque, taught him patience, breathing, sight picture, all the things that mean nothing here where the enemy is invisible and every breath might be your last. The M1 Garand weighs 9.5 pounds unloaded. With a full 8-round in-block clip, it pushes closer to 10. Hastings has carried it for 4 months, through replacement depot processing in England, across Omaha Beach 3 weeks after D-Day, through the nightmarish hedgerow country of Normandy, where every field was a killing ground and every corner held a German machine gun. He's cleaned it, cursed it, slept with it, fired it at shapes in the fog that might have been enemy soldiers or might have been shadows. He's killed maybe 3 men with it. Maybe. You never really know in combat. You fire at muzzle flashes and movement, and sometimes the movement stops, and you tell yourself that counts. Platoon's reorganizing, Rodriguez says bitterly. Platoon's getting cut to pieces. You see what happened to Bailey and Kowalski? You see that? Hastings saw. Everyone saw. Bailey stood up to pass a message to the next foxhole. A stupid mistake. The kind of mistake that gets you killed. And the sniper punched a hole through his helmet so fast Bailey didn't even have time to register surprise. Just there 1 second, dead the next. And when Kowalski and Mendez went out to pull him back, because you always try to bring them back, because leaving a man behind is the worst sin a soldier can commit, the sniper killed them both before they could drag the body 5 feet. 3 men gone. 3 families back home who'll get telegrams and folded flags and the cold comfort of words like heroic and sacrifice. Hastings tightens his grip on the M1. The rifle is the one constant in this chaos, the one thing he understands. Unlike the Kar 98K the Germans carry, which requires working a bolt between every shot, ejecting the spent casing, loading a fresh round, reacquiring the target. The M1 is semi-automatic. You pull the trigger, the rifle fires, the gas system cycles the action, and you're ready to fire again. 8 rounds as fast as you can squeeze. 8 chances to hit before the distinctive ping of the ejecting end-block clip tells everyone within 50 meters that you're reloading. The Germans mock that ping. Hastings has heard captured Wehrmacht soldiers laugh about it, how the sound is like a dinner bell, a signal that the American shooter is empty and vulnerable. But the Germans don't understand. 8 rounds in rapid succession is a force multiplier. It's the difference between a gunfight and suppression. It's the reason a single American rifleman can pin down 3 Germans armed with bolt actions, forcing them to keep their heads down while American maneuver elements flank or advance. At least, that's what the training manuals say. The training manuals didn't mention fog, so thick you can't see 15 meters. They didn't mention snipers who kill with mechanical precision. They didn't mention this place, this forest that eats men like a threshing machine and spits out bodies. Contact front. Someone shouts from the left flank, Sergeant Matheson's voice, hoarse with strain. 50 meters, moving through the tree-line. Hastings's heart lurches into his throat. He brings the M1 up, thumbing off the safety, scanning the fog through the rear aperture sight. Nothing but gray on gray, trees like prison bars, shadows that could be anything. Then movement, shapes coalescing out of the mist, low and fast, darting between tree trunks. 3 of them, maybe 4. German infantry in their mottled camouflage smocks, moving with the practiced coordination of men who've done this 100 times. Rodriguez fires first, a single shot that cracks out and dissipates into the fog. Hastings sees one of the shapes stumble, but he can't tell if it's a hit or just a man taking cover. Then the entire American line opens up, a ragged volley of M1 fire that sounds like a string of firecrackers compared to the deep, authoritative boom of German Kar 98 KS. Hastings squeezes the trigger. The M1 bucks against the shoulder, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He's firing at shadows, at movement, at anything that doesn't look like trees. The rifle's gas system cycles smoothly, each shot feeding the next, and he's through half his clip before he even realizes he's firing. A German machine gun opens up from somewhere to the right, the MG-42. That terrible sound like tearing canvas, ripping across the American positions at 1,200 rounds per minute. Hastings ducks instinctively as rounds snap overhead, tearing through branches, kicking up geysers of mud and pine needles, suppressing fire. Sergeant Matheson is screaming, "Keep the heads down. Keep firing." Hastings pops up and empties the rest of his clip into the fog. The M1's trigger resets after each shot with mechanical reliability, and for a few seconds he's not thinking, not scared, just executing the drill. Acquire target. Breathe. Squeeze. Acquire next target. Breathe. Squeeze. The clip ejects with that distinctive ping, the 8-round end block spinning away into the mud. Hastings drops into the hole, hands fumbling for a fresh clip from the bandolier across his chest. His fingers are numb, clumsy. The first clip slips from his grasp. He curses, grabs another, slams it down into the M1's receiver. The bolt flies forward with a satisfying clack, chambering the first round. He's back in the fight in maybe 6 seconds. Rodriguez is still firing, measured shots now, 3 or 4 seconds between each trigger pull. "I can't see shit," he yells over the gunfire. "Where the hell are they?" "Doesn't matter." Hastings yells back, "Just keep shooting." And they do. Up and down the American line, M1 Garands bark out their rapid fire, filling the forest with a sustained volume of fire that no bolt-action rifle can match. The Germans go to ground, pinned by the sheer weight of incoming rounds. Hastings can't see them, but he can hear the impact, bullets banging off trees, cracking through branches, forcing the enemy to stay low, stay hidden, stay suppressed. This is what the M1 was designed for. Not precision shooting, not long-range marksmanship, but volume of fire, sustained aggression, the ability to turn every American rifleman into a one-man fire base that can hold a position or support an advance through sheer firepower. The German MG-42 fires again, longer bursts this time, traversing across the American Foxholes. Someone screams, high and sharp and abruptly cut off. Hastings doesn't look. Can't look. He fires 3 more rounds into the fog, then drops to reload again. His hands are steadier now, muscle memory overriding fear. Clip out. Clip in. Bolt forward. 8 more rounds ready to go. They're pulling back. Rodriguez shouts, "I think they're pulling back." The German fire slackens, then stops entirely. The forest goes quiet except for the ringing in Hastings' ears and the ragged breathing of men who've just survived another firefight by the thinnest of margins. Smoke drifts through the fog, cordite and pine sap, a smell that Hastings will associate with terror for the rest of his life. Sergeant Matheson appears at the edge of their foxhole, his face streaked with mud and pine needles. He's a career soldier, 28 years old, with 3 years in the Army before Pearl Harbor and enough combat experience to know when his men are about to break. "You boys okay?" "Yes, Sarge." Rodriguez spits into the mud. "We're golden. Living the dream." Matheson almost smiles. "Almost. That was a probe. They're testing our positions, figuring out our strength. They'll hit us again in an hour, maybe 2, and next time they'll know exactly where we are." "So what do we do?" Hastings asks. "We hold." Matheson's eyes sweep the tree lane, calculating angles, fields of fire, weak points in the defensive line that the Germans will exploit. And we make every shot count. They've got snipers and machine guns. We've got volume of fire. You keep that M1 singing, and we might just live through this. He moves on to the next foxhole, checking on the next pair of terrified soldiers, offering the same grim reassurance. Hastings looks down at his M1 Garand. The wood stock is dark with moisture and the residue of burned powder. The barrel is warm despite the cold. He runs his thumb along the receiver, feeling the machine precision of American manufacturing, the engineering that went into making a rifle that could outshoot anything the Germans fielded. 8 rounds, semi-automatic, gas-operated, the greatest battle implement ever devised, or so General Patton said. Hastings hopes to God Patton is right, because if he's wrong, this forest is going to eat them all. November 2nd, 1944, 0835 hours, 2 kilometers east, Wehrmacht Field Command Post. Hauptmann Dieter Kohl stands in front of a map table covered with acetate overlays showing American unit positions, approach routes, and the steadily shrinking perimeter of German defenses in the Hürtgen sector. He's 34, a career officer who joined the Wehrmacht in 1932 when the Reichswehr was still limited to 100,000 men, and dreams of another war seemed like the fantasies of bitter old men. He's fought in Poland, France, Russia. He's seen the best of the Wehrmacht's offensive power and the worst of its defensive collapse. He's learned to read terrain, predict enemy movements, exploit weaknesses in training and doctrine. And right now, he's reading reports that don't make sense. Say that again, he tells Lieutenant Weber, his intelligence officer, a thin man with round spectacles who looks more like a librarian than a soldier. Weber doesn't look up from his notes. The American rates of fire are increasing. A Hauptmann. In the firefight this morning, our forward observers estimate they sustained 3 to 4 times the volume of fire we could return. That's impossible. Kohl traces a finger across the map, following the American advance through the forest. They're using the M1 Garand, yes, but volume of fire doesn't win battles. Accuracy wins battles. Discipline. Fire control. With respect, sir, the Americans are achieving both. Weber pushes his spectacles up his nose. The semi-automatic action allows them to maintain suppressive fire while maneuvering. Our men are reporting difficulty acquiring targets because they're forced to keep their heads down. And when our snipers engage, they're immediately answered with sustained fire from multiple positions. Kohl frowns. This contradicts everything he's observed about American infantry tactics since Normandy. The Americans are enthusiastic, yes, and they have material superiority, better rations, more ammunition, reliable logistics, but they lack the tactical sophistication of Wehrmacht veterans. They bunch up under fire. They rely too heavily on artillery support. Their junior officers make predictable decisions. They're shopkeepers and farmers playing at war, aren't they? Show me the casualty reports, Kohl says. Weber spreads a series of typed sheets across the map table. Kohl scans them, his frown deepening. The numbers are higher than expected. Not catastrophic. The Germans are still inflicting 3 or 4 casualties for every man they lose, but the trend is wrong. It's moving in the wrong direction. 3 weeks ago, when the Americans first entered the Hürtgen, Kohl's regiment was killing 5 Americans for every German casualty. 2 weeks ago, it was 4 to 1. Now it's 3 to 1, and in some sectors, particularly where American infantry have been able to close to 50 meters or less, the ratio is approaching 2 to 1. That's not sustainable. Germany can't replace losses. America can. What's changed? Kohl asks. They're adapting, sir. Weber's voice is careful, the tone of a man delivering bad news to a superior who doesn't want to hear it. The initial waves of replacements were poorly trained, yes. Green troops, rushed through basic. But the survivors, the ones who've been fighting for weeks or months, they're learning. And they're teaching the new replacements. Learning what specifically? Fire and maneuver. Using the M1's rate of fire to suppress our positions while squad elements advance. They're no longer trying to match us shot for shot. They're drowning us in volume. Cole is silent for a moment, studying the map. The American advance through the Hurtgen has been costly for both sides, but the Americans keep coming. For every patrol wiped out, 2 more appear. For every company bled white, a replacement company arrives with fresh equipment and full ammunition loads. And now they're learning to use their primary advantage, that damned rifle. The M1 Garand has been a subject of Wehrmacht intelligence analysis since 1943, when the first captured examples were sent back to Berlin for evaluation. The conclusion then was dismissive. A well-made weapon, certainly, but tactically irrelevant. A semi-automatic rifle in the hands of poorly trained conscripts would simply mean wasted ammunition. The Germans had superior marksmanship training, superior fire discipline, and the proven effectiveness of the Kar-98K. A bolt-action rifle, yes, but one that rewarded skill and precision. The Kar-98K was a craftsman's tool. The M1 was a factory product for factory workers. But craftsmen, Cole is beginning to realize, can be overwhelmed by factory production. What do the men say, he asks. The actual soldiers on the line. Weber hesitates. They're frustrated, sir. The snipers especially. They report making clean kills, but the American response is immediate and overwhelming. One shot from a Kar-98K, and they're answered by 20 or 30 rounds from M1S. Our men can't stay exposed long enough to work the bolt and acquire a second target. They're forced to displace after every shot. And the machine gunners? The MG-42 teams are still effective, but they're drawing heavy counterfire. The Americans have learned to locate the gun by sound and suppress it with rifle fire, while they call in mortars or artillery. Weber pauses. Sir, in Russia, we face Soviet conscripts with poor training and inferior weapons. We still won most engagements through superior tactics. But the Americans, they have superior logistics, superior firepower, and they're developing comparable tactics. The combination is, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Cole walks to the entrance of the command post, a reinforced bunker dug into a hillside overlooking the forest. Through the gap in the camouflage netting, he can see the Hurtgen stretching west, an endless maze of fir trees and ravines and mud, every kilometer bought with blood, every position held by men who are tired and cold and running out of reasons to believe victory is possible. He thinks about Klaus Becker, his best sniper. 35 confirmed kills. A man who can put a bullet through a playing card at 300 meters. A man who embodies everything the Wehrmacht prides itself on: skill, discipline, professional competence. And Klaus Becker is having to displace after every shot because American riflemen can put 50 rounds downrange in the time it takes him to work his bolt twice. Issue new orders to the forward positions, Cole says quietly. Snipers are to engage only when they have clear lines of retreat. Machine gun teams are to displace after every sustained burst. Infantry squads are to avoid prolonged firefights with American rifle units unless they have overwhelming superiority. Weber makes notes. We're yielding the initiative, sir. We're acknowledging reality. Cole turns back to the map. The Americans have a weapon that changes the tactical equation. One American rifleman with an M1 has the sustained firepower of 3 Wehrmacht soldiers with Kar-98Ks. We can't fight them on equal terms anymore. Then how do we fight them? Cole doesn't answer immediately. The question is too large, too complicated, too wrapped up in the slow-motion collapse of the entire German war effort. How do you fight an enemy with infinite resources, infinite reinforcements, and a rifle that turns every soldier into a force multiplier? You can't. Not in the long run. Not when every casualty you inflict is replaced within a week, and every casualty you suffer is irreplaceable. But you can make them pay. You can bleed them. You can turn every meter of ground into a killing ground, every advance into a Pyrrhic victory that costs them thousands of men they can technically afford to lose, but morally can't. We fight them with terrain, Cole finally says, with preparation, with the knowledge that we're defending our homeland, and they're attacking through country they don't understand. He looks at Weber, and we pray that winter comes early and bogs them down before they reach the roar. Weber nods slowly. He's smart enough to understand what Cole isn't saying. They're not going to win. They're going to delay. Attrit. Bleed the Americans enough that the Western Front stalls out while Germany's scientists finish whatever wonder weapons are supposedly in development. Jet aircraft, rockets, super heavy tanks that can turn the tide. It's fantasy. Cole knows it. Weber probably knows it too. But what else is there? He returns to the map table and begins drafting orders. New defensive positions. Fallback lines. Procedures for breaking contact when American fire superiority becomes overwhelming. All the doctrine of an army learning to retreat with dignity. Outside in the forest, Klaus Becker and 10,000 men like him are learning that skill and experience aren't enough when the enemy has better tools and the industrial capacity to arm every soldier with them. The Germans mocked the Americans at Normandy, called them soft, called them amateurs, called them over-equipped and undertrained. They're still calling them that, but quietly, privately, in command posts and aid stations and foxholes across the Western Front, German soldiers are beginning to wonder if the Americans they're fighting today are the same Americans they fought 3 months ago. And they're beginning to understand that mockery is a luxury afforded to armies that are winning. The Wehrmacht isn't winning anymore. November 3rd, 1944. 1,425 hours. American forward positions. Staff Sergeant Marcus Dalton crouches behind a blown-down tree trunk, his M1 Garand resting across the splintered wood, watching the tree lean 60 meters ahead for any sign of movement. He's 26, old by infantry standards, a machinist from Detroit who joined up 3 months after Pearl Harbor and spent 2 years training other soldiers before his repeated requests for combat assignment finally got approved. Now he's a squad leader in 2nd Platoon, Baker Company, responsible for 9 men whose average age is 21 and whose average time in combat is 6 weeks. 6 weeks. In the Hurtgen, that makes them veterans. Behind him, spread across a shallow depression in the forest floor, his squad occupies positions they've held for 18 hours, which is about 17 hours longer than most positions last in this sector. They've been probed twice by German patrols, shelled once by mortars, and pinned down for 3 hours by a sniper who killed PFC Morrison before Dalton finally put enough M1 fire down range to force the German to displace. That's the lesson Dalton has learned. The hard truth purchased with the lives of men whose names he's trying not to forget. You can't outshoot a German sniper. You can't match a Wehrmacht veteran's marksmanship. Can't compete with men who've been killing since Poland and France and Russia. But you can drown them and lead. Sergeant. Private Eddie Kowalczyk crawls up beside him, keeping low, his M1 clutched against his chest. Kowalczyk is from Chicago, 19 years old, with the kind of baby face that makes him look 16. Lieutenant wants to see you at the CP. Dalton nods, scanning the tree lane one more time before sliding backward down the slope. The command post is a generous term for a hole in the ground covered with logs and a shelter half, located 30 meters behind the forward positions, where Lieutenant Harrison and the platoon radio operator are trying to coordinate with battalion. Harrison is 24, a college graduate from Virginia who received his commission through R2C and his baptism of fire 2 weeks ago when the previous platoon leader stepped on a mine. He's smart, conscientious, and terrified of making a mistake that will get his men killed, which, Dalton thinks, is probably the best attitude an officer can have in this nightmare forest. Dalton. Harrison looks up from a hand-drawn map. We're moving out in 30 minutes. Battalion wants us to clear that machine gun nest at the crossroads and push forward to the next defensive line. Dalton studies the map, noting the distances, the terrain, the narrow approach through thick forest that will funnel his squad into a killing zone. That's suicide, sir. The Krauts have that crossroad zeroed. We go in there, we're going to lose half the platoon before we get within grenade range. I know. Harrison's voice is tight, but division is pushing for progress. We've been stuck in this sector for a week. We need to show movement. Movement. Dalton keeps his voice neutral, professional, but he can't quite hide the bitterness. Progress measured in meters. Success defined by map coordinates that mean nothing except as markers for where men died. What's the plan, sir? Harrison traces a finger along the map. First squad advances through the northern approach. You take second squad along the southern flank. Third squad provides suppressing fire from our current positions. We hit them from two directions simultaneously, overwhelm their position with volume of fire. It's a decent plan, Dalton thinks. Maybe even a good plan. If they had more men, more support, more of everything except determination and M1 Garands. What about the sniper? The one that got Morrison. He's still out there. Can't be helped. Harrison meets his eyes. We're infantry, Sergeant. Taking fire is part of the job description. Dalton almost smiles. The kid is learning. Yes, sir. We'll be ready. He crawls back to his squad's positions and gathers his men. 9 faces. Some familiar after weeks of fighting together. Some new. Replacements for the replacements. Fresh troops from the Repel-Depel who've had maybe 3 days to learn how to stay alive in combat. Dalton looks at each of them, remembering names, hometowns, the details that make them people instead of statistics. Listen up, he says quietly. We're moving on that MG nest at the crossroads. Southern approach, move fast, stay low. When we get within 50 meters, I want maximum suppressing fire. Don't aim. Don't try to be Sergeant York. Just keep your M1S singing until that machine gun stops firing. Clear. Nods all around. Kowalczyk's hands are shaking slightly, but his jaw is set. Private Jackson, a lanky farm boy from Georgia, checks his ammunition, bandolier full, extra clips in his pockets, grenades secured to his webbing. Corporal Hayes, the assistant squad leader, works the action of his M1 one more time, chambering around, ensuring the gas system is clean and functional. They're scared. They should be scared. But they're ready. One more thing, Dalton says. The Krauts have Kar 98KS. Bolt action. They fire once. They work to bolt. They fire again. That takes time. Maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3. That's your window. When you hear a German rifle fire, you put 10 rounds down range before he can chamber his next shot. You suppress that position. You keep his head down. You don't give him time to aim. The M1 gives us 3 times the firepower. We use it. It's become a mantra in the platoon, repeated by squad leaders and corporals and anyone who's survived more than a week. Use the rate of fire. The M1 isn't a precision instrument. It's a hammer. You swing it hard, swing it often, and you don't stop swinging until the enemy is dead or running. At 1,450 hours, the platoon moves out. First squad disappears into the forest to the north, visible only as vague shapes between the trees. Dalton leads his squad south, moving in a staggered column, each man maintaining 5-meter intervals. The forest floor is a treacherous maze of roots and deadfall, mud and hidden sinkholes that can break an ankle or swallow a boot. They move slowly, carefully, listening for any sound that might betray enemy positions. The forest is never silent, branches creaking in the wind, the distant rumble of artillery, the caw of crows picking at the unburied dead. But Dalton has learned to filter out the background noise, to listen for the specific sounds of danger. 50 meters from the crossroads, he raises a fist. The squad freezes. Ahead, through the trees, Dalton can see the sandbag emplacement of the German MG-42 position, a professional fortification with interlocking fields of fire and clear sight lines along both approach routes. The machine gun isn't firing, but Dalton can see the barrel poking through an aperture in the sandbags, and he can see the helmets of at least 3 German soldiers behind the position. To the right, covering the northern approach, a second position, probably riflemen with Kar 98KS, positioned to provide supporting fire if the machine gun is engaged. Dalton signals for Hayes to bring the squad online. They spread out, each man finding cover behind trees or fallen logs. M1S at the ready. Across the forest, somewhere to the north, first squad should be doing the same thing. The plan is to hit both flanks simultaneously, overwhelming the German position with a sudden storm of rifle fire that will force them to keep their heads down while third squad's machine gunner, a barman named Riley with nerves of steel, advances to grenade range. It's a good plan. Plans usually are. right until the first shot is fired. Dalton checks his watch. 14:58. 2 minutes until the assault begins. He glances at his squad. Kowalczyk is breathing hard, his face pale. Jackson has his M1 already shouldered, sighting down the barrel at the German position. Hayes catches Dalton's eye and nods once ready. The seconds tick down. Dalton's finger rests on the M1's trigger guard, not quite on the trigger itself. Safety off. 8 rounds loaded. A fresh clip in his hand for the inevitable reload. Somewhere in the forest, a whistle blows, the signal. Dalton comes around the tree and fires. The M1 bucks against his shoulder, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He's not aiming at anything specific, just putting rounds into the sandbag position, forcing the Germans to duck. All along the line, his squad opens fire. 9 M1 Garands hammering out a sustained roar that fills the forest with sound and fury. The German MG-42 starts to traverse in their direction, but the weight of incoming fire forces the gunner to flinch. Round smack into sandbags, kick up dirt, whine off metal. Dalton empties his clip in maybe 4 seconds, the ping of the ejecting end block lost in the cacophony. He drops into cover, reloads, pops back up, and fires again. This is the M1's strength, not accuracy, though Dalton is hitting what he aims at, but sustained aggression. The ability to lay down continuous fire without the interruption of working a bolt. Every American rifleman becomes a one-man firebase, and 9 men firing in concert creates a wall of lead that no Kar 98K armed squad can match. From the northern flank, first squad opens fire, their M1S adding to the maelstrom. The German position is caught in a crossfire, taking incoming rounds from 2 directions simultaneously. The MG-42 fires a short burst, then goes silent, either suppressed or disabled. Move, move, move. Dalton is on his feet, advancing through the trees, firing from the hip. The rest of the squad follows, bounding forward in short rushes, each man covering while the others advance. It's fire and maneuver, the basic infantry tactic taught in every training camp, but executed with the aggression that only comes from men who know hesitation means death. A German soldier rises from the position, Kar 98K in hand. He gets one shot off. Dalton hears the flat crack, feels the round pass somewhere to his left, and then Hayes puts 3 M1 rounds into the man's chest. The German crumples. Dalton is 15 meters from the position now, close enough to see the faces of the defenders. 2 of them are trying to swing the MG-42 around. The third is working the bolt of his Kar 98K, ejecting a spent casing, fumbling a fresh round into the chamber. Dalton shoots him first, center mass. 2 quick shots that drop the man like a puppet with cut strings. Then he empties the rest of his clip into the machine gun position, joined by a half-dozen other M1S pouring fire into the sandbags. The Germans go down, overwhelmed, outgunned, unable to respond to the sheer volume of incoming fire. Riley, the bar man, appears from the left, his automatic rifle hammering out bursts that chew through the sandbag fortification. A grenade arcs through the air. Dalton doesn't see who threw it, and detonates inside the German position with a dull crump that sends sandbags and equipment flying. Then silence. Sudden, shocking silence after the thunder of combat. Dalton's hands are shaking. His ears are ringing. He's still alive. "Clear the position," he shouts, voice hoarse. "Watch for wounded. Stay alert." His squad advances cautiously, rifles ready. The German MG-42 nest is wrecked, sandbags torn apart, equipment destroyed, 3 bodies sprawled in the mud. Kowalczyk is staring at them, his face white, his M1 hanging forgotten in his hands. "First time." Hayes asks quietly. Kowalczyk nods mutely. "You did good, kid. Kept firing, kept moving. That's all that matters." Dalton checks the bodies, ensuring they're dead, retrieving weapons and ammunition. The Kar 98K rifles are well made, beautifully crafted, the kind of weapons that speak to German engineering excellence. But each one requires working the bolt between shots, a mechanical action that takes precious seconds. Seconds that mean the difference between life and death when the enemy has semi-automatic fire. He picks up one of the Kar 98Ks, works the bolt experimentally, It's smooth, well-oiled, perfectly functional. A sniper's rifle, a marksman's tool. But Dalton is holding an M1 Garand, a rifle designed not for craftsmen but for soldiers, not for precision but for sustained fire, not for the battlefield of 1918 but for the industrial warfare of 1944. And in this forest, in this war, that makes all the difference. Lieutenant Harrison appears, breathing hard, his uniform torn. Good work, Sergeant. Battalion is pleased. We're the first unit in the sector to take a defended position in 3 days. Dalton looks at the bodies, the wrecked fortifications, the cost measured in German lives because American lives were spent yesterday and the day before. Yes, sir. Mission accomplished. But as he reloads his M1 and prepares to move forward to the next objective, he thinks about the German soldiers who died here. They were good soldiers, well-trained, professional. They had decent weapons and strong positions and all the advantages of prepared defenses. They just didn't have the firepower to compete. And in the end, in the mud and blood and chaos of close combat, firepower is everything. November 7th, 1944, 0820 hours. German defensive line, 3 kilometers east of American forward positions. Obergefreiter Klaus Becker has been a sniper for 31 months. He has survived Stalingrad, Kursk, the long retreat across Ukraine, the desperate fighting in Normandy, and now these cursed forests, where every morning brings fresh American attacks, and every evening brings the question of whether tomorrow will finally be the day his luck runs out. He has adapted to many things: cold, hunger, the progressive collapse of Wehrmacht logistics, the replacement of experienced soldiers with teenagers, and old men conscripted from factory floors. But he has not adapted to this. The sound of American M1 Garands firing in sustained volleys that turn the forest into a storm of incoming fire. He lies in his hide, watching the American positions through his Zeiss scope, and what he sees disturbs him more than any Soviet attack ever did. The Americans are moving differently now. Not the stumbling advances of green replacements, not the parade ground tactics that got thousands killed in the first weeks of the Hurtgen offensive. They're using fire and maneuver, bounding overwatch, suppressive fire followed by immediate assault. They're fighting like Wehrmacht infantry, except with 3 times the firepower. 60 meters ahead, an American squad is preparing to assault a German machine gun position. Becker can see the squad leader, a sergeant probably, based on the way the other soldiers look to him for direction, organizing his men, pointing out approach routes, ensuring everyone knows their role. There's no hesitation, no confusion. These are soldiers who've done this before and survived. The assault begins with shocking violence. 9 M1 Garands open fire simultaneously, and the German position disappears behind a wall of impacts, round smacking into sandbags, ricocheting off metal, forcing the defenders to duck. The MG-42 tries to respond, but the gunner can't stay exposed long enough to acquire targets. Every time he rises to fire, another burst of M1 rounds forces him back down. Becker has seen this pattern repeated for days now. The Americans locate a German position. They suppress it with overwhelming rifle fire. They advance under that suppression, closing to grenade range before the Germans can mount effective resistance. It's simple, brutal, and increasingly effective. He watches through his scope as the American squad overruns the position. The Germans don't stand a chance. 3 Wehrmacht soldiers with Kar 98K rifles against 9 Americans with M1S. The math is merciless. Becker could intervene. He has a clear shot at the American sergeant, maybe 150 meters. An easy kill for a marksman of his skill. But if he fires, he'll give away his position, and then those 9 M1S will pour fire into his hide while the Americans call in mortars or artillery. He'll have to displace immediately, abandoning a position it took hours to prepare. 1 kill, maybe 2 if he's lucky, then retreat. This is what his war has become, not the methodical hunting of Stalingrad, where he could occupy a position for days and rack up dozens of confirmed kills, not the open terrain of the Ukraine, where a sniper could dominate kilometers of approach routes. This is harassment fire, hit-and-run tactics, the warfare of a losing army that can no longer afford to stand and fight. Becker shifts his aim, scanning for officers or radio operators, high-value targets that might justify the risk. He finds a lieutenant, identifiable by the map case and the way soldiers report to him, 50 meters behind the assaulting squad, standing beside a tree, studying terrain through binoculars. Becker settles the crosshairs on the officer's chest. His finger takes up slack on the trigger. Range, 170 meters. Wind, negligible. Elevation, minimal. This is the shot he's made thousands of times. The shot that defines what a sniper does. He breathes out slowly, feeling his heartbeat steady, his body becoming an extension of the rifle. The Zeiss scope brings the American lieutenant close enough to see the stubble on his jaw, the mud on his uniform, the wedding ring on the hand holding the binoculars. Becker fires. The Kar 98K bucks against his shoulder. Through the scope, he sees the lieutenant collapse, sees soldiers rushing to his position, sees the sudden chaos of a unit that's just lost its commander. Then the forest erupts with return fire. The Americans don't know where Becker is. They can't, not precisely, but they know approximately where the shot came from, and they pour fire into that general area with the kind of ammunition expenditure that makes German quartermasters weep. Becker hears rounds cracking through branches overhead, thudding into tree trunks, kicking up dirt and pine needles all around his position. 20, 30 M1s firing at once, turning a 30-meter radius of forest into a killing zone. He doesn't try to chamber another round. He grabs his rifle and crawls backward out of his hide, moving fast, ignoring the branches that catch on his camouflage smock, focused only on putting distance between himself and the incoming storm. Behind him, his carefully prepared position is being chewed to pieces by sustained American rifle fire. 50 meters back, he pauses in a shallow depression, breathing hard, listening to the continued crack and whine of incoming rounds. The Americans fire for another 30 seconds, maybe longer, before the volume finally slackens. By Becker's estimate, they've just expended somewhere between 800 and 1,000 rounds of .30-06 ammunition for one dead officer. In Russia, the Soviets would have charged his position with bayonets fixed, screaming "Ura!" In Normandy, the Americans would have gone to ground and called for artillery. But now here, they're using their rifles the way the Wehrmacht uses machine guns, as area suppression weapons that make enemy positions untenable through sheer volume of fire. It's working. God help them all. It's working. Becker makes his way back to friendly lines through the maze of defensive positions that constitute the German MLR, main line of resistance. The positions are professional, well-sighted, mutually supporting. The soldiers manning them are a mixture of veterans and replacements, men in their 30s who've fought across half of Europe alongside boys of 16 who've never fired a shot in anger. They're good soldiers, Becker thinks, disciplined, committed, fighting for their homeland now, not for conquest or ideology, but for survival. But they're armed with bolt-action rifles in a war where semi-automatic fire is becoming the standard. He finds Hauptmann Kohl at the battalion command post, studying intelligence reports and casualty lists with the grim focus of a man trying to calculate how long his unit can hold before collapsing entirely. A Hauptmann, Becker reports formally. I engaged an American officer at 170 meters. Confirmed kill. I had to displace immediately under heavy return fire. Kohl looks up from his reports. How many returned fire? 20 or more M1 rifles, sir. Perhaps 1,000 rounds total expenditure. Kohl's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes hardens. For one officer. Yes, sir. And if you'd stayed in position to engage additional targets? I'd be dead, sir. Becker says it without drama, without false bravado. It's simply the truth. The volume of fire was overwhelming. I couldn't have survived more than a few seconds. Kohl nods slowly. He's been receiving similar reports from across the sector. Snipers forced to displace after single shots, machine gun teams overwhelmed by American rifle fire, infantry squads unable to hold positions because American squad-level firepower exceeds German platoon-level firepower. The Americans are adapting, Cole says quietly. 3 months ago, they didn't understand how to use the M1 effectively. They were trying to outshoot us, matching precision for precision. But now they've learned. They're using volume of fire as a tactical weapon, and we don't have an answer. We could request MG-42 reinforcements, Becker suggests. More automatic weapons to match their rate of fire. We've requested everything. Cole's voice is bitter. Reinforcements, ammunition, better positions, time to rest and refit. We're told the priority is the Eastern Front. Always the Eastern Front. We're expected to hold with what we have, for as long as we have it. He returns his attention to the casualty reports. Becker sees the numbers, higher than yesterday, higher than last week. A steady grinding attrition that no defensive doctrine can sustain indefinitely. What are your orders, sir? Becker asks. Cole is silent for a moment. Then, continue your mission. Engage when you can do so safely. But don't sacrifice yourself for one kill. We can't replace snipers. We can't replace anyone. He looks at Becker with something like sympathy. You're one of the best marksmen in the Wehrmacht, Klaus. But one sniper with a bolt-action rifle can't stop a company of Americans with M1 Garands. No one can. Becker salutes and withdraws, making his way back through the defensive positions. He passes machine gun nests, mortar pits, command bunkers, all the infrastructure of prepared defenses. He passes soldiers who are cold and tired and hungry, who are fighting because they have no choice, because their homeland is behind them and the enemy is ahead. They're still good soldiers, still professionals, but professional skill and defensive doctrine can't overcome fundamental material disadvantage. That evening, as darkness settles over the Hurtgen forest, Becker cleans his Car 98K with the methodical care of a craftsman. He oils the bolt, checks the scope mounts, ensures every component is functioning perfectly. The rifle is a masterpiece of engineering, accurate, reliable, beautifully made. But it's a bolt action. 5 rounds internal magazine. Each shot requires working the bolt, ejecting the spent casing, chambering a fresh round, reacquiring the target. In the hands of an expert marksman, maybe 3 aimed shots per minute. The Americans have M1 Garands, 8-round semi-automatic. In the hands of an average rifleman, 8 aimed shots in 10 seconds, followed by a 6-second reload and 8 more rounds ready. The math is simple and brutal. Becker has killed 37 American soldiers. He's one of the Wehrmacht's best snipers, a man whose skill has been proven across a dozen battlefields. But for every American he kills, 3 more appear with their semi-automatic rifles and their endless ammunition and their growing tactical sophistication. He's winning every individual engagement, but Germany is losing the war. And in this forest, on this front, there's nothing Klaus Becker or any soldier like him can do to change that fundamental reality. Outside, in the darkness, American patrols are moving through the forest, probing, testing, looking for weak points. And in their hands, each and every one of them carries an M1 Garand, the greatest battle implement ever devised. General Patton called it. Klaus Becker, lying in his dugout and listening to the distant crack of rifle fire, is beginning to understand that Patton might be right. November 10th, 1944. 1,140 hours. American Forward Assembly Area. Staff Sergeant Marcus Dalton sits on a fallen log in what passes for a rest area. A clearing 50 meters behind the current of Malar where soldiers can eat cold rations, clean weapons, and try to remember what it feels like to not be terrified. His M1 Garand rests across his knees, the metal cold even through his gloves. Around him, the survivors of 2nd Platoon are scattered in small groups, some sleeping in muddy holes, others staring at nothing, processing the things they've seen and done over the past week. Lieutenant Harrison is dead, killed by a sniper 4 days ago. The new platoon leader is Lieutenant Morrison, a fresh-faced kid from the replacement depot who's trying very hard to look like he knows what he's doing. Dalton respects the effort, but he doesn't give Morrison more than 50-50 odds of surviving his first week. This place eats officers. Private Kowalczyk approaches, carrying his M1 and a question in his eyes. Sarge, can I ask you something? Sure, kid. Are we winning? Kowalczyk sits down heavily. I mean, we keep attacking, we keep taking positions, but it feels like we're just grinding forward. 100 meters a day. Is that winning? Dalton considers the question. It's a good question. The kind of question that separates soldiers who think from soldiers who just follow orders. Depends on how you define winning. He says finally. We're not losing. The Krauts keep pulling back. Every position we take is a position they can't use to stop us. That's something. But at what cost? Kowalczyk gestures at the clearing, at the depleted platoon. We started with 42 men. We're down to 26. That's not even counting the replacements who lasted less than a week. Yeah, Dalton runs a hand over his M1's receiver, feeling the machine precision. But the Germans can't replace their losses. Every man they lose is permanent. Every position we take stays taken. Time is on our side. Doesn't feel like it. War never does. They sit in silence for a moment, listening to the distant rumble of artillery. American 105s, probably, pounding German positions in preparation for the next attack. The sound has become so constant that Dalton barely registers it anymore. Background noise, like rain or wind. Corporal Hayes walks over, his M1 slung over his shoulder. Sarge, Lieutenant Morrison wants the squad leaders. Planning session for the next push. Dalton nods and stands, joints protesting. He's only 26, but he feels 50. Combat ages you in ways that have nothing to do with chronology. The planning session is held in a bunker that used to be German until 3 days ago when 1st Battalion overran it. The walls are reinforced with timber, the floor is packed earth, and a kerosene lamp provides dim illumination for the map spread across a wooden table. Lieutenant Morrison stands at the head of the table, flanked by the platoon sergeant and the remaining squad leaders. Gentlemen, Morrison begins, and Dalton can hear the uncertainty beneath the formal tone. Battalion has ordered us to continue the advance. Our objective is the next ridgeline, approximately 800 meters northeast. Intelligence reports indicate moderate German resistance, estimated company strength with machine gun support. Dalton studies the map, noting the terrain features. The approach is through dense forest with limited cover, culminating in an uphill assault against prepared positions. It's the same tactical problem they've been solving for weeks, with the same brutal calculus. American lives traded for German ground. What's the plan, sir? Asked Sergeant Williams from 1st Squad. 3 Squad assault with mortar support. 1st Squad takes the left flank. 2nd Squad center. 3rd Squad right. We advance under rolling barrage, suppressing German positions with rifle fire, closing to assault distance. Once we reach the objective, we consolidate and prepare for counterattack. It's a sound plan, Dalton thinks. Textbook infantry tactics. The kind of plan that works if you have the firepower to execute it. And thanks to the M1 Garand, they do. Rules of engagement remain the same. Morrison continues. When you encounter resistance, suppress immediately with maximum firepower. Don't try to match them shot for shot. Overwhelm their positions with volume of fire. The M1 gives us a 3-to-1 advantage in sustained fire rate. Use it. This has become doctrine now, passed down from battalion to company to platoon. The American way of war in this forest. Identify the target, suppress it with rifle fire, maneuver under that suppression, close and destroy. Simple, direct, and increasingly effective as soldiers learn to trust their weapons and their training. The Germans are still better marksmen, still better tacticians in many ways, but they're armed with bolt-action rifles and fighting an army where every single rifleman has semi-automatic fire. The meeting breaks up after 20 minutes of detailed coordination. Dalton returns to his squad and briefs them on the plan. Faces are tired, eyes are hollow, but no one complains. This is the job. This is what they signed up for, or got drafted for, or somehow ended up doing, because history and geography and politics put them in this forest at this time. At 1,300 hours, the platoon moves out. They advance in staggered formation, each squad maintaining tactical spacing, each soldier alert for any sign of enemy contact. The forest is its usual nightmarish self, Too many trees, too little visibility, too many places where a German soldier with the Kar 98K could be waiting. But Dalton has learned something in his weeks of combat. A German soldier with a Kar 98K is dangerous, but not invincible. One shot, then he has to work the bolt. One shot, and Dalton can put 8 rounds down range before the German can fire again. It's a lesson purchased with blood, but it's been learned. At 1,340 hours, 2nd Squad makes contact. A German machine gun opens up from a concealed position on the ridgeline, and suddenly the forest is alive with the tearing canvas sound of MG-42 fire. Dalton hits the ground, rolls behind a tree trunk, brings his M1 up. Suppressing fire, he shouts, "Keep that gun's head down." His squad responds instantly. 9 M1 Garands hammering out a sustained roar. They're not shooting at the machine gun. They can't see it, not precisely. But they're putting rounds into the area where the muzzle flash came from, forcing the gunner to duck, forcing the German infantry supporting the position to keep their heads down. This is the M1's true power, Dalton realizes. Not individual marksmanship, but collective suppression. 9 men with M1S can pour out 72 rounds in less than 15 seconds, creating a wall of fire that no enemy position can ignore. To the left, 1st Squad is engaging. To the right, 3rd Squad. The entire platoon is laying down suppressive fire while moving forward by bounds, one fire team shooting, the other advancing, classic fire and maneuver executed with the aggression that only comes from soldiers who know their weapons work. Dalton empties his first clip, ping, drops behind cover, reloads in 5 seconds, pops up and fires again. He's not thinking anymore, just executing the drill. Identify threat, suppress threat, advance on threat. The M1 makes it possible. The training makes it instinctive. The German machine gun tries to respond, but it's taking fire from 3 directions simultaneously. The gunner can't stay exposed long enough to lay down effective fire. German riflemen try to support with their Kar 98KS, but for every bolt action shot they get off, the Americans return 10. The math is merciless. The outcome is inevitable. At 1,405 hours, 2nd Squad reaches grenade range. Dalton throws a fragmentation grenade, followed by 2 more from Hayes and Jackson. The explosions are muffled crumps in the forest, followed by silence. Clear the position. Dalton orders. They advance cautiously, weapons ready. The German MG-42 nest is destroyed, sandbags torn apart, the gun itself twisted and inoperable for bodies sprawled in the mud. Dalton checks them methodically, ensuring they're dead, retrieving any intelligence or equipment. Beside the machine gun, he finds a Kar 98K rifle. It's in perfect condition, clean, well-oiled, clearly maintained by a soldier who took pride in his weapon. Dalton works the bolt once, feeling the smooth action. It's a fine rifle, a beautiful rifle really, but it's a bolt action in a semi-automatic war. He drops it and retrieves his M1, checking the chamber, ensuring he's ready for whatever comes next. Around him, his squad is consolidating, counting ammunition, checking for wounded. Kowalczyk is pale but unhurt. Hayes is grinning despite the mud and exhaustion. Jackson is already smoking the liberated German cigarette. They've taken another position, gained another 100 meters, lost 0 men this time. A minor miracle that Dalton doesn't trust to last. Lieutenant Morrison appears, breathing hard. Good work, Sergeant. Battalion is pleased with our progress. We've advanced 800 meters today. That's more than any other company in the sector. Dalton nods, too tired for pride. What's next, sir? We hold here until morning. Then we continue the advance. Morrison looks around at the forest, the destroyed German positions, the cost measured in expended ammunition and exhausted soldiers. We're breaking through, Dalton. The Krauts are pulling back. We might actually win this thing. Maybe, Dalton thinks. Maybe they're winning. Maybe this grinding advance through the Hürtgen forest is actually accomplishing something beyond adding names to casualty lists and coordinates to maps. Or maybe they're just learning to kill efficiently in a war where efficiency is measured in meters per corpse. But as he settles into a fighting position and prepares for the German counterattack, that might or might not come. He thinks about the rifle in his hands. The M1 Garand, the weapon that General Patton called the greatest battle implement ever devised. 3 months ago, the Germans mocked American marksmanship, called them amateurs with fancy equipment, predicted that Wehrmacht professionalism would overcome American industrial production. They don't say that anymore, because the Americans learned. They adapted. They figured out that the M1 Garand isn't a precision rifle for long-range marksmanship. It's a fire superiority weapon, a tool for dominating firefights through sheer volume of accurate fire. And once American soldiers learned that lesson, learned to trust their weapons, learned to suppress instead of aiming for individual kills, learned to move under fire with the confidence that comes from knowing you can put out 3 times the firepower of the enemy, the tactical equation changed. The Germans are still good soldiers, still professionals, still fighting with courage and skill. But courage and skill can't overcome being outgunned by a ratio of 3 to 1. Dalton checks his M1 one more time, chambers around, settles into his position to wait for whatever comes next. The forest is quiet now, the temporary silence that always follows combat. But it won't last. It never does. Tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, they'll attack again, and the Germans will defend again, and men will die on both sides. But the mathematics of firepower are inexorable, and in this war, in this forest, the side with semi-automatic rifles is grinding down the side with bolt actions. The Germans laughed at American marksmanship. They're not laughing anymore.